The modern format is dead. It's not a non-rotating format. It changes with the Modern Horizon sets coming out. And that is very clear with this no changes announced for today's banned and restricted announcement. It's clear that Wizards of the Coast does not see a problem with Scam being double the represented percentage of the top played decks, or the next top played deck in the modern format, and how being griefed all the time is a perfectly fine play pattern. And then many of you will have the criticism of, well, you can beat the Scam issue that happens on turn one. It's very easy with a little bit of removal, and they don't have any more resources to take a lot of cards. It does not still take away from the fact that that play pattern is not fun to play against. It's not great to play against, but also that is a very subjective thing, how something is fun for someone and not fun for someone else. And I get that. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to address it all. I want to address the anger, the frustration that many of you have. I want to address the future of the modern format and the future of product releases moving forward, but also address some of the open-ended questions, some of the positivity that is likely going to come out of this announcement, whether it be in the modern format, whether it be with product releases. I want to talk about it all. So strap on in, let's talk about the modern format first and my frustration with it. And I think there's just some clear statements to make, things that will not change. And that is the fact that Rakdos Scam is going to be the top of the roost. And now if you want to play in modern, you have to have a plan against it. You have to go under it. You have to go over it. You just have to beat it. That is the deck to beat. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no hoping for a BNR announcement. The next BNR announcement will likely also be no changes, because the one in August was the big one. The one now is just an emergency one after a couple of sets. And if Wizards of the Coast doesn't see a problem with the modern format, then unfortunately our problems with this won't matter either. There'll likely be many of you that will not be playing modern coming forward, and I'll also be addressing that at the end of the video, so timestamps down below if you just want to skip to that. But in terms of cards and their playability, this means that yes, you are going to get griefed all the time. Fury is going to continue to stop all the creature decks from having any form of existence in the format, and then Violent Outburst is just going to make Force Negation and combo extremely powerful, and it is relatively frustrating for your opponent to tap out and still have an answer to it, but I think combo is allowed to exist. And Ren and 6 just doing the best job in the world as a smoke screen to allowing 4 to 5 color decks to be so easy to make that it's just all wrapped up in a 2-mana planeswalker that can answer creatures and have a long game win condition. It's insane what this card does and what those 4 cards have all done to the modern format, along with the rest of the elementals and the more Modern Horizon sets. But for some reason, people still think Mill is a frustrating deck to play against. Grow up, as what I would say to all of you. Really, really grow up. But regardless of all of that, the One Ring will continue to rise in price. There will slightly be a slight dip because of the recent holiday release that's going to come up in November. And that also means that Orcish Bowmasters will still see the same pattern. With its prevalence in Legacy and its real just stability in Modern, its playability, those two cards will just be antithesis of each other. People are going to play the One Ring decks. People are going to play Orcish Bowmasters. And people are going to play Preordained. People are going to play Bowmasters. And people just will be punishing you for doing the things you want to do. Answers are fine. Interaction is important to a good format. But when that one piece of interaction is everywhere, that becomes a problem too. And some would say, well, in Legacy you have something like Force Negation, but Force Negation polices the nonsense in the format, whereas Orcish Bowmasters just punishes you for doing the things that are integral and important to do on a turn-to-turn basis. So difference of opinion and a lot more nuance than what I just brought on, but it's important to know that these cards will now go up. They will become slightly more accessible in the short term, but more so not in the long term. We will see these cards throughout. It is likely good to just pick up some copies and put them in your decks if you have the ability to, if you've been waiting to. Otherwise, you're not really going to be able to compete in the modern format. The One Ring is everywhere, Orcish Bowmasters is everywhere, and Modern Horizons is here to stay. Now, there's something missing from this BNR announcement, and I kind of alluded to it and I kind of showed it as well, but there is a large lack of explanation as to why the change was no changes, why the announcement was to not touch anything in any format, which I think is actually the biggest slap in the face. And I get it. I talked about how the August 7th BNR announcement was actually the big one, and this is more so an emergency one, a couple weeks after the set release, that to touch any emergency problems that are happening in the format, any OCOs or anything. But no changes in any format is crazy. When you have all these people complaining about Orcish Bowmasters in Legacy, you have Scam in Modern, you have the mono green decks in Pioneer, Wizards, at the end of the day, they do have the stats. They likely see that the play patterns, the representation, and the win percentages of all of these problems that I listed are perfectly fine for their needs. How they present themselves and the way the formats are available to play for players, it matches up. Legacy may not be a Pro Tour format. Modern still has a healthy player base online. And while Pioneer, the percentages in terms of play seems relatively distributed. All these don't show the general feelings of the player base. And I think that's where that dichotomy is. A lot of players are confused. There's so many that say they're having fun with Modern. Modern's diverse, there's answers. But then it feels like there's a lot of enfranchised players that are just as frustrated. Should we be playing other formats? Should we be trying something different? Are we done with screaming into the sky about our problems with the format that we love? Well, I mean, I think at least there should have been a blurb. At least in August 7th announcement, this is the big one with Mind's Desire and Preordained being unbanned. There's a whole section about Modern, touching Pioneer and Legacy. Heck, they were even addressing Vintage with the One Ring and Urza Saga. If they're willing to touch on all of that, I think it's worth addressing what the players are talking about and really just showing that you care for what there is. At the end of the day, as a consumer of this game, I'm a sheep. I want to be coddled. I want to be given the information that sounds good to me. I want to have a reason and a justification for why you're not doing something, whereas the lack of response feels like a fuel to the fire instead of a little bit of water to douse out a small flame. It feels like just bringing on a larger problem. And I think there's going to be a lot of frustration in the coming days for people. A lot of people not playing the Modern format anymore and switching to other formats or just trying and engaging with not Modern, but Magic the Gathering in different ways. And I think that's a positive thing. It's important for you to try different formats, but it's also important for you to understand that your investment in time, knowledge into a format is also still worth it after so long. And well, that's a difference of opinions, and really it's a question of why. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they have an announcement? And I think there's two big reasons, and it's really because, well, we're in an RCQ kind of season right now, in the middle of one, where there are still a lot of Modern tournaments happening right now, a lot of qualifiers, and so they probably didn't want to make a big shakeup in the middle of the RCQ season, which is fine. People have invested into their strategies. They probably have like an anti-scam package, or they're playing scam and they know what they want to do, and they don't want a big shakeup to have to buy new decks, new strategies, and completely evolve. Which in one sense, again, as I said, is perfectly fine. You do want the invested players to keep being invested and have those changes, but there's a lot of casual players, and heck, even invested players, that were hoping for a change coming out of this, regardless of the RCQ format. Not everyone is a Magic grinder. It's seen with the rise of EDH that more players are casual players. They're not necessarily going to tournaments every other weekend, every weekend. This is a minority of people. But I think it's also important, I guess, on their side to acknowledge the playability of the competitive aspect of Modern and keep that, or Magic in general, and keep that going. Secondly, I think it's also because with Lord of the Rings kind of coming out, they also mentioned that they're happy with the play patterns of certain cards, but they're keeping them under watch. And I think this piece from the recent August 7th BNR announcement is important, because they say that they're watching it, but they're generally happy with how things are. Scam has obviously gotten worse over the past couple of weeks, but it generally hasn't been too different. We now have beanstalk strategies taking over, a lot of card draw happening from that, but otherwise the format hasn't too largely changed. It still is drawing a bunch of cards, it's playing the One Ring, it's playing Bullmasters, and it's thought seizing 2 cards out of your deck or out of your hand on turn 1. It's doing all the same things it's done. So I don't think for Wizards' sake a lot has changed. I think, again, as I mentioned, the win rates, the playability, the representation of different archetypes is fine per format as Wizards sees it. There's no need for an emergency change. And I think the real next thing that we can address is the products. The format itself is a whole discussion that I want to close off at the end of this video. So feel free to skip this section if you just want to go back to talking about the formats in general and how I feel about them and how I'm going to close and adapt. But we do need to address the product side of things. This is both a frustrating piece and actually some positive bit as well. So I don't want to be entirely negative, but the thing that they announced, instead of providing us an explanation as to the no changes in the format, is a new booster. What are play boosters, says Mark Rosewater. It's a combination or essentially an amalgamation of the play booster and the draft booster, which has led to a lot of confusion for a lot of consumers out there, a lot of local game stores as well, just kind of stocking shelves and everything, where set boosters had a different kind of orientation to them, and draft boosters had different, so you couldn't draft with set boosters. But according to this article, a lot of people stopped buying draft boosters because the EV on them wasn't too great, so you just bought set boosters, and so a lot of people were playing a lot less draft. And then we already had collector boosters, which were a premium product, so it was just nice on that side. If you just wanted foils and alt arts, it was nice to just buy that. But then if you wanted to play draft and interact with the game, they saw the loss of that, and this is the way that they make a lot of money, playing players playing standard, players playing draft. That's a way for Wizards to directly gain that money, people opening booster packs. And so they are now amalgamating it into something called a play booster. It is draftable, and there are up to 4 rares total in the deck. There's 1 to 6 commons. The 7th slot is a list. The list they're actually shortening. Instead of being like 300 cards, it's now like 40 cards or 30 cards with like 10 guest slots in there. So random things coming in and out of the list. So this is a great way to have reprintability. And then you have, slots number 8 to 10 are going to be uncommons. You have rares and mythics in slot 11, a basic land in 12. 13 is going to be a non-foil wild card. 14 is going to be a foil card. And then in general, just like a token helper card. As well. So the pack is a lot more diverse. These wild cards, by the way, this is for arena mostly. This orientation right here, so kind of the top row, the basic land and the token card, that is going to be the general make of this. So what we're seeing here is with these wild cards and the mythic card, there's going to be 4 rares in total in this set. So generally speaking, the EV of these sets of these packs should be a lot higher. But does that mean that they're going to print more rares into sets? There's going to be more jank rares. It's not necessarily that the EV goes up. It's just the quality of the rares go down. There's going to be more of an opportunity, I guess, to get mythic rares in this case. But again, I can't help but feel to make up for this that they're going to just decrease the quality of rares. And you're going to see a big breakdown here. So the difference between draft boosters, minus 1 playable card, minus 3 commons, you're going to get, wild cards, and then a 1 in 8 opportunity of getting a card from a list, and roughly a 1 in 3 opportunity of an art card that didn't appear in draft boosters. So a little bit of variability. So a little bit of everything from the set booster, from the draft booster, all into one product. This is, again, a net positive for the player, just having to look at one type of booster that you can draft with, that you can purchase and collect. And then also one thing for the local game store, from an administrative perspective, just stocking shelves, it just makes more sense to just have one product and amalgamate the two. So a lot of positivity in that sense. But I can't help but address this cost bit that was talked about. Will playing limited events cost more? Likely yes, because this, the match the cost of set boosters, and with MSRP going down, the cost of these packs are going to be up to the LGS to determine, up to the buyers and the sellers and all that stuff, supply and demand and all that good Gucci stuff is going to determine the cost of this pack. And with more rares and the EV going up potentially, if the quality of rares don't go down, I can't help but think this is no longer be a $4 or $5 pack. I can only imagine that the ability to play limited open packs is just going to decrease. The general accessibility of this format and just opening products like this is going to go down. And many of you already know, as an enfranchised constructed player, that buying singles is the best way to get the bang for your buck and get the cards that you want to play. But for those limited players and for those collectors, it's going to be more expensive and less accessible to play these formats. I don't think this will have the intended long-term, I guess, effect that they're hoping for. I think it's a solution to diluting the whole draft booster, set booster thing, and now combining it, which is great. But I think the general cost of cards will go up. I don't think this will actually have the intended use of, decreasing the cost of rares. Even though there's more per pack, I think the increased pack, the lack of people opening them, will still lead to increased prices of cards. And I think that's where it leads to the final section of the video. Changes ahead. How do I feel about this BNR announcement, the products in general, and how I want to change playing Modern, playing Magic, and this channel moving forward. At the end of the day, I'm still frustrated with how things are. I generally am pretty open to some of the positive pieces of it, and I'm definitely still looking to that, where, you know, packs are a lot more amalgamated. It's a lot easier for the user. We now have a set Modern metagame that is now just up for us to change. And I guess from a deck builder's perspective and a thinker and a player, that's very exciting to brew and to play against. But that also means, as a mill player, that generally I won't be playing a lot of Modern mill. I'm just going to put it out there right now. I think it's very frustrating to play mill in this format right now. I don't enjoy it a lot. You will see it every so often on the channel, and I highly praise players like Plato and Tybalt for continuing to play it, get great results out of it. But it's extremely frustrating to play that archetype in Modern right now. So you will see a shift in terms of the Modern gameplay that you see on the channel. You will see definitely a shift, continued shift towards, you know, playing Pauper, potentially playing more Legacy. And that is where this channel will be going. A lot less Modern mill until I see a change, a positive change towards this archetype and a positive change towards the Modern format. I think in general that Magic is going in a good direction with this change in packs. But I think without addressing active changes to the format, I think there's a lot of things that are concerning for players. I think that there is a general, actually, I'm going to point out, shout out to one of the members of the Mill Discord for bringing this up for me, is that this is kind of the closest that Wizards has addressed the, well, secondary market. It is just the same cost to print the same amount of rares as per commons. We lost 3 commons to increase the amount of rares in the packs. It costs the same, and with MSRP gone, it's the same to print this cardboard. It's just a bunch of ink on paper. But now they're addressing it by putting it into one pack, making it more accessible. So are they going to decrease the amount of rares, or sorry, the quality of the rares to address this? And so there aren't as many chase rares. Draft will change because there aren't going to be as bomby as before. It's just going to be more accessible to get rares and have these high power cards in your draft. So limited might actually have positive changes for it, with a lot more high power stuff happening in it, a lot more accessibility in terms of players looking for key cards in it. Limited is very hard to follow in that sense. But again, going back to that original point of them addressing the secondary market by showing that it's not more expensive to do this. There's going to be a slight change to it, and you can easily change the numbers of rares and mythics, uncommons, whatever, in a set and make it more accessible for players. So that's a really interesting point to bring up in that sense. But there's a lot to think about when it comes to this BNR. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Give me your comments, you know, leave a like on the video, and just give me your thoughts in general. Are you frustrated? Are you happy with the changes? I want to hear it all down below.